kids out, and we are a very, very young team. But they beat Colton last week for their very first win of the year, which was awesome, 3 sets to 2, and they too also are improving by the week. We've got a really good head coach there with Olivia that's doing some great stuff with us, and she's being helped by Ms. Schmidtman. Soccer, we get to talk about soccer. We've got 10 boys out, 2 more kind of waiting because they've got to get their 5 practices in before they can start playing, and then also 3 girls. We this year are teaming up with Salem Academy, and just this last week, our boys helped them to Salem Academy's first win in over 2 years. And my understanding is it was our boys pretty much dominated, which was pretty cool to see. So if you have an opportunity to catch a game over at Salem Academy in Salem, I would certainly recommend it. Mom also said they're super fun kids and also super respectful. None of these kids play other sports. So we've got 13 people, 10 boys and 3 girls who are actually engaged in something now that they wouldn't normally be in. So that's really good. And we all know the research tells us that kids do better in school when they're doing co-curricular, extracurricular activities. Football, 38 kids out. We are currently 2-0. We are ranked 2nd in the state in the power rankings behind Hefner. And we play Hefner, I want to say, in 2 weeks. So a match of the Titans coming up here pretty quick. They played really well. Took them a little bit of time on Friday to get going, but once we got going, we ended up beating St. E.M. Christian, which is a 3A school, 31-0. So it was also a good showing. And I think I'm gonna turn this over to Jared for middle school.
Sure. Middle school, Coach Moffitt, I mean, he just keeps recruiting. We were out there on the soccer field today watching that first game, and he found 2 or 3, additional students who are interested in playing. And so that's going to put us somewhere around 17 or 18 for soccer. We'll have about 21 right now for football. We were at about 18, but we had some late arrivals show up, and so they'll miss the first week as they're getting their practices underneath them. But just excited to get more students out there. And then volleyball, we have 16 students, so over 50 students total in fall sports, which is amazing at the middle school. And Coach Moffitt is doing an amazing job coordinating it all. And our soccer field looked beautiful today. A lot of positive comments from the community on it. So
I forgot to mention, we literally for fall sports, we have half our student body out for one sport. Amazing. Fantastic.
Questions? Okay. Rachel now will share our communication plan.
Thank you. I want to make sure that my audio is not interfering. No? Okay, excellent. So I'm really excited tonight to share a communication plan for the Mount Angel School District for this year. And I've been asked why one might be needed. And I have several strong reasons why I believe a communication plan is warranted. One is I think there needs to be just clarification on who addresses what, when, and why, and how. But I also believe we can do a better job with our alignment of when messages go out between schools and to stakeholders, and make sure that our families know when to expect communication rather than just have things be put out when they might not be expected. I also think that we can do an even stronger job with our public relations. It's important, and this is in the communication plan, that we don't rely on someone else to tell our story. We tell our story and our successes. So public relations is really important. And then finally, it's been quite prominent since I have come here beginning in May, that we need to grow in the area of bringing forward parents for leadership who may speak languages other than English. This communication plan is a chance for us to stretch and grow a bit and really work intentionally toward meeting that goal. So I do not have a slideshow tonight, but what I do have to share with you, and I will go through it quite briefly. Make sure it's there. Is the actual plan. And while I won't go over every aspect of it, I would like to go over the goals of the communication plan with you. So pardon me while you might get blurry-eyed as I go through these. We want to make sure that we're supporting our district's strategic plan, that we're strengthening our relationships and building a stronger sense of Mount Angel community, and also increasing awareness, encouraging involvement, and fostering partnerships for our schools and our district. The key messages we want to impart through our communication this year: we believe that every student deserves to be supported by strength, by need, and through inclusion. We foster a strong sense of community in the Mount Angel area, and we foster strong community support for our school district. And we want to make sure that our stakeholders, excuse me, understand that we are responsible stewards of taxpayer investments. I'm not going to go into the strategies right now because I believe that they're woven pretty tightly into the goals that you will see. But we do have a lot of target audience, including prospective employees that we would like to bring to the Mount Angel School District. I think this is a very important statement. Communication activities are performed continuously to ensure we tell our story and not depend on someone else to tell a story that is not ours. There's a piece in here about all of the different ways that we communicate and how often we will be communicating. And directors, you have this in your packet so you can refer to that. This is a breakdown of the different methods that we use: public relations, outreach, publications, certainly board meetings virtually, digital platforms, and crisis management. We have several goals for this year. Goal 1 is to support the strategic plan through ongoing and consistent communications. And the strategy for that is increasing public awareness that we actually do have a strategic plan and that there are some goals there. I won't be going into the specific activities at this time, but I will make sure that this is posted online for all patrons to take a look at, and board members, of course, tonight, if you have questions, we can talk about those. Goal number 2, strengthen our relationships and a stronger sense of community, with several strategies here. We need to make sure that we know what the public attitudes are toward the district and increase awareness and support for our district. We need to cultivate and strengthen relationships within the Mount Angel School District community. I need to work on maintaining and improving my outreach and my activities to stakeholders. And we also want to make sure that our school administrators are also reaching out. Goal number 3, increase awareness, encourage involvement, and foster partnerships for our school district. Before I move any further, what you may have noted in my first 2 goals was a lot of outreach, outreach, outreach. But that's not just effective communication. Really excellent communication is 2-way. It brings people to us and we listen to them and we observe them and what they have to tell us. So our first strategy is leveraging external communications through existing civic publications, including the City of Mount Angel newsletter. In talking with the city manager, he invited us to always have a section in the the city newsletter to put district news. And I think that is a perfect example of how we can leverage something that's already in place. We want to make sure that we, again, are fostering two-way communication. How are we providing opportunities so that we can listen rather than tell? And then finally, we want to increase access to information and leadership opportunities for our parents who speak languages other than English. And I do want to go over these 5 bullets because this is a stretch goal for us and we need to fully understand what it may involve. We want to make sure that we continue to have our external communications provided in Spanish. Purchase additional interpretation and translation support services. Identify specific interpretation, translation tasks and deadlines for which employees who are bilingual. Increase personal outreach, phone calls in person to have our parents who speak a language other than English as their native language. What is it that we could do to get them to a site council meeting? What is it that what would it take to get them to a parent teacher club meeting or here to the school board meeting? We need to have some personal outreach to see what it would take and to listen to them about what it would take to get them here and to listen. And then offer parent participation activities at times that are conducive to participation. Having a site council meeting at 3:30 in the afternoon works for many people, but it may not work for our parents whose native language is not English, who are working 2 jobs and may not get home until 7, 8 at night. So those are the kinds of things that we want to stretch with this year. So those are the basics of the communication plan. And I would be happy to entertain questions.
Do you have any questions for Rachel?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next, I will accept any motions to approve our regular school board meeting agenda.
I move that we approve the September agenda as is.
Second.
All in favor? And then on to the consent agenda. Had a chance to check that over and someone wants to make a motion to approve a consent agenda.
Not sure I understand what I'm doing here. What is the consent agenda?
Piece right here.
Oh, okay, yeah. I move that we approve the consent agenda as published.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So from this point, we will start with our reports and we'll start with our administrator reports.
I would be happy to start. So we had a great first week of school at St. Mary's. Lots of smiley faces and, just joy. And that's the best thing that we can ask for at this point, right? So our current enrollment is, well, when I wrote this, we've gone up, I think about 6 students since then, but we were at 269 students. And we have started to implement our new SEL curriculum. It's called Purposeful People, and it's in alignment with the curriculum that the high school and middle school use, the Character Strong program. And we have time built into our master schedule daily for a 10 to 15 minute lesson in the morning, and then 10 minutes of closure at the end of every day. Just kind of giving us that easy, welcoming start to the day, and then making sure the kids feel great and ready to exit their day in a supportive way also. So we're really happy with that, and it's going really well. A weekend. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to
What was
answer.
the name of that? What was the name of that program?
Purposeful People.
Jasmine, this is a new program Or
Yes, it is. It's in alignment with the one that was implemented last year at the secondary level.
how's your staff like it so far?
It's great so far. Yeah, we just had a training during in-service week for a half day, so that was really helpful to kind of kick it off and everybody get excited about it.
What might be like an example of like a mini lesson or whatever that they would do to start?
So they have, if the program, what I really like about it, it sort of takes the idea of the virtues, that we've been focusing on for many years and really gives lessons to it. So there's just one particular trait for a month, and then they have it broken down into 4 weeks of lessons. So they're just really short. This month is responsibility. So they're just talking about responsibility. Can they recognize it like in scenarios and stories or maybe in pictures? They might just show a visual and talk about like what might have happened and how is he being responsible here, to role playing, with the kids and having them reflect on it by the end of the week. So it's kind of short, but it's really easy to implement.
Very
And-
simple, but
yeah, exactly. And the kids are really liking it too.
good. That's good. Anybody else? Okay, so Jared?
Yeah. I'll echo what Jasmine said. We're excited just to have our students back in person and a lot of smiling faces. And so that's always a pleasure to see. And I know our staff are excited about that as well. Enrollment's right at about 167. And so you guys can see the breakdown there with 6th grade and 8th grade being our biggest classes, and 7th grade being at about 45 students there. And I might be reading some slightly updated numbers than what you guys are seeing. When I wrote this board report, attendance was pretty good. Through the first couple of days, we had about a 98% attendance rate. The first couple of days of school, we'll take our wins when we can get them there. And so just continuing to reach out to families that we're not hearing from, or students who, we have anticipated enrolling that haven't enrolled, and making sure we have a good understanding of what their plans are for the upcoming school year. And so that is a priority for us in our office. We talked a little bit about fall sports. Excited to see so many students involved in fall sports, and hopefully we can continue that trend as we approach both winter and spring. And our band program, continuing to build even day by day, as students who maybe opted out of it last year are now kind of coming back into the fold. And so we have the opportunity for band night tomorrow night, where students get to pick up those instruments, and that's a really exciting process for them. And so 34 total students in band and 15 total students in leadership. And so middle school continues to just keep functioning on all levels. And this week we start Character Strong, which is our SEL program, and we're focused on building communities in the classroom at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade levels. So it's differentiated by grade level.
Is that daily with the Character Strong?
Yeah, our advisory is 4 days a week. The Character Strong lesson, just depending on how, how it's facilitated and how much the students get into those individual activities, could take anywhere probably between 1, max probably 3 days. And then we supplement the other advisory time with some of our Avid school-wide strategies. So binder checks, organizational strategies, planners, things of that nature, just to make sure that we're really emphasizing good study habits and school-wide practices.
Anybody have any questions for Jared? Okay, thank you, Jared.
Welcome.
Dale?
Thank you. I'm going to split mine up into 2 pieces. The first we'll talk about in-service week, and then the first week of school and highlights. So we spent what was scheduled to be 2 hour-and-a-half meetings together as a staff to really focus on 2 things really are, what is our fundamental purpose and why do we do what we do? Because since I've been there, we really haven't done that. And which actually gets you to the point of creating your mission statement, which we haven't had as a school. So the first day we spent gosh, it was almost close to 2 hours. It was scheduled for an hour and a half and staff went for almost 2 hours because they really were excited to dig into that work. And then that was on a Monday, and then on Wednesday, it was the exact same thing. The expectation was not to come away with a mission statement that first day. It was to come away with an idea of what we want to do. We split up into two groups, and I showed them some examples of what mission statements are, and they just dove right in. And it was so incredibly energizing to watch the work the groups were doing. It was competitive, which I thought was very good. It was super collaborative. And what we ended up coming away with a mission statement, which I think really reflects who we are as a school. And let me read it for you. It says, all students at JFK will acquire the academic, social, emotional skills needed to become lifelong learners who thrive in a diverse and evolving world. And I thought that couldn't be more true to what we're trying to aspire to. So the work they did on those days was just incredible. I couldn't be prouder of my group. I didn't do much other than just facilitate the work. They did that work. And like I said, I was not expecting at all a mission statement to come out the second day we did this, but they did phenomenal work. The next week we started with kids. The first time we've had kids in our building full-time in person since March 13th of 2020. And to say we were all a little nervous could be an understatement. But I'm going to say I think it echoed a word that maybe Jasmine had to use was joy. And I'm going to throw in another word, which was excitement. You could just see it in kids' eyes, in our high school kids' eyes, and you don't typically get to see that often with high schoolers. They loved being in school. They were following the protocols that we had in place for the most part. We have kind of 3 simple things we're following this year, which is wear your mask properly. When you're in the building, all we ask you to do is wear your mask properly over your nose or your mouth. Sanitize your hands whenever you go into a classroom, and then do your best to stay 3 feet apart. You know, we're social human beings and we love to be able to come together. I'm not going to be running up and down hallways yelling at kids to stay 3 feet apart. You know, if they're jumping on each other, that's a different story. But the reality is that we're going to do our best to stay 3 feet apart. We're high schoolers, we're young adults. And so we're going to treat them as young adults, and that's what we're doing. Our enrollment's good. We're about 190 students, 9th graders, 48, 10th grade, 44, 11th grade, 64, and our 12th grade is 34. Our 12th grade is a little bit bolstered by some exchange students that we have. And this is kind of cool. We have 7 foreign exchange students this year. 7. Why would you want to be an exchange student this time? I don't know. But these kids are such great kids. I've got to meet all 7. We have 2 from Germany, 1 female, 1 male. We have 2 from Spain, a female and a male. We have our male foreign exchange student from Slovakia. Big kid, probably about 6 foot, 220 pounds. He's a rock. And it was good to meet him. We have a male student from France and a female student from Italy. So we are super excited to have these kids. They were at the first football game. They were kind of all sitting together. And as you see them in lunch, they're doing a great job of kind of dispersing. They don't really sit together. They go out and sit with other kids, which I thought was really good. I don't know if I'd be able to do that as going into a different school that I don't know anybody about, if I'd be able to, you know, sit with kids that I didn't know, but they're doing a fantastic job with that. Overall, again, I'm just going to say is joy and excitement. You know, it is fun to see kids in the building again and actually getting to work on academics. You know, last year was a tough year. And I know we've heard this word learning loss, and I don't like to use the words learning loss. We're using the words unfinished learning because that's super important. You know, we're gonna look at where students are, and we're gonna start there and then move through that way. So that is our focus. We're gonna look at it as unfinished learning. Questions?
I've had stage students from Slovakia too, and one of them was like big 6'4".
This kid's like a shot putter. I mean, thinking about myself going back in my day as a javelin thrower, like do you do track?
Let's go play basketball, that would be good.
Yes. And yeah, at lunchtime he shoots and he's actually a pretty good shot.
Yeah, so, but that's great, to have so many exchange students. Anybody else questions? Okay, and our next one, Erica.
Heading in the back, I won't make you turn your head. You know, just for you. So I have just a couple things for my report for you, and then there's a little slideshow after. So the first few things on your report, in the new iteration of Ready School Safe Learners, which is now called, like, they still put Ready School Safe Learners, and then they have resiliency framework because it's not long enough. They add all of that. Mark, I know you dig the sarcasm. So they added a piece there for students who experience disabilities called recovery services. And so we're all kind of scrambling to figure out what that means. It's something that the Department of Ed put in without seeking the regular process with the engagement period. It's actually under a temporary rule. And so it's left districts scrambling a little bit to figure that out. And so there is, if you go into the updated RSSL, there is actually a separate document related to that. We are in process of working through that guidance. And then simultaneously, ODE is working through the actual rulemaking process to have it become a regular rule. I'm actually, in fact, I was on with ODE this morning to be a part of that engagement process. So I just wanted you to know that, yes, it's a temporary rule, but ODE is pursuing it as a regular rule. It comes from the federal level. Each state is working through it differently and how they apply that. It was actually a good segue from Dale as far as unfinished learning, but it's how it applies to students who experience disabilities explicitly. Weirdly, the guidance is quite short, which never happens, especially in the land of special education. There's like 2 pages and then 2 pages of a checklist. But the implications are quite huge, which again has really left a lot to districts to need to figure out. So if you know you're really having a hard time sleeping one night and want to know all about COVID recovery services, the checklist starts on page 3. Really the fun is in the rabbit trail of links, which really are quite helpful. And so you'll click on one link, which might lead to some data collection. And then within that document, there's 3 more links. And so by the time you're done, you have quite a summation of paperwork. And so I just want you to know that we've actually met as an admin team. We've met with admin and SPED. And then we actually have a training, for lack of a better word, but on the 15th, we're coming together again so that we can do a more in-depth training for 2 hours related to that. And I've also been collaborating with the Tri-County area folks. Okay.
Is there a deadline that they've given?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. If you go to page 3, the second bullet does tell us that we need to consider recovery services at minimum at every initial IEP meeting and at every annual IEP meeting for the next 2 years. So this is an ongoing thing. And this is under the temporary rule, so I don't know what this new rule will be drafted as. And each decision is going to be individualized. So whatever we could have, let's say your IEP meeting, and we're like, nope, Therese is good to go, right? She's on track, her data looks great. But then we come to Andrea's IEP meeting and it's like, you know what? It's looking like Andrea could benefit from some recovery services. But how we determine that's going to be solely based on her data, right? So the amount of recovery services is determined for her might be different from what Rachel's. So everything is going to be different. But that process at the minimum is going to have to be engaged for that IEP team based on this at least twice, because we have 2 IEP cycles. Does that kind of help?
Yeah.
Certainly could engage more if we
Right.
see a change in data, parent request, anything like that. It's certainly meant to be an engagement process. Yeah, that's a good question.
Eric, is this only hitting kids or students with an IEP, or is there a bit broader scope?
Yeah, I wish I had a whiteboard. Love whiteboards. So,
And
yeah.
in general,
There is
how
one
many students do you think this will affect roughly? And just like.
Yeah, so I've asked other districts this because, so there's this continuum of services. So like the summer grant that we had this last year was really targeted at that broad net of students, right? So that's like all students, right? This that I'm talking about is just for students on IEP. So I was asking like larger districts, kind of what they were anticipating. And people haven't really had these meetings yet, but they were trying to base it on like, well, who opted in of like all of their IEP, students who were on IEPs for their recovery type services over the summer, and they were at like 30%. Whether that's a good indication of who would actually qualify based on data, I don't.
So you're not gonna know until you get through at least an entire cycle, how many students you're gonna have to fill the recovery.
Yeah. Yes, I think the good distinction is going to be though that this is not compensatory education where we didn't deny anybody their education, right? Where that's like way over here. It's that because of maybe the format or just due to, I mean, we know that all students or a lot of students, just due to the disruption and a variety of factors, didn't make the same progress that they would have being in person 5 days a week. How did that disproportionately affect a student who experiences disability? And taking that entire student situation into the decision-making process. Some students will be fine. Some students, their data is going to look like this, and that's what we need to address. I'm hoping that maybe districts who are larger will have earlier data that might give us a better percentage.
Is there any funding for these services?
Why would there be?
True.
Watering my money tree though. No, there's not.
That makes too much sense.
Right? Why would they do that?
Can some of the, you know, we have 25% of ESSER funds go to learning loss?
Yes.
Is that,
Esther's like always the answer.
I know,
right?
but I mean, could that
Yes,
be considered learning loss
yes,
for that reason? Okay.
yes, yes. Keep asking for more money. Okay, so this is why I didn't put much on there because I knew. Okay, so I'm sure you all and the community have a lot of questions about how we are meeting social emotional needs within our district, given some of the vacancies that we have. So I put just a few slides in here, but certainly feel free to ask questions and interrupt me along the way. You know that I'm always down for that. Okay, so next. Maybe. Okay. Thanks. So I wanted to introduce to you, if I had people here, I would do this, and then I keep stepping in front of you. I'm so sorry. So we, I believe, have a really robust team of people to meet the wide variety of social emotional needs within our district. And so I wanted to be sure to let you and the community know how we're doing that. So at the elementary, so that everybody knows, we currently do not have a counselor at the elementary or at the middle school. And in a couple of weeks, we won't have a high school counselor either. He will be transitioning to a different position as well. So the timing was a little tough for us. It also, though, is a really good opportunity for us to be looking at being creative, right? And being flexible. And if you're in a small district, you're really good at being flexible. So we have Michelle Kearns, which is new, and shifted her into being a TOSA, which is ed speak for a teacher on special assignment. So she is at the elementary school working just on like behavior prevention and social emotional learning. So sometimes the idea of being a behavior specialist gives that negative connotation of she's just reactive, dealing with kids who have explosive behaviors, but that's really not the purpose of her position, right? She's not doing discipline. She's really there to be working on those proactive interventions. I put Nick on here, even though that's not a new position, but he has been in this role because he is also a teacher on special assignment and he has been working on those tiered interventions. We know that you really can't separate academics and behavior. They go hand in hand. And so he is really strong in data. He knows his stuff. And so I wanted to make sure that you all knew that he's very much a part of that integrated system. And as of like 3 hours ago, we have somebody in process. You probably know her as Melissa Stewart. She graduated from here. You know her. Yes. So super excited to have an offer out and hopefully she'll be starting next week. This is a new position for our district that we've wanted for a couple years. And thanks to SAA funding, we're going to be able to have an instructional assistant who has experience in working with students who may need extra support in social emotional, and not be tied like to a student, but to be able to support school-wide based on need, based on data. And so this is somebody who will be, who one already has training and experience, but who we will continue to train up and not have kind of that old model of being like a one-to-one. So if Mr. John over here has all this explosive behavior, we tie a grown-up to him. And that's not what this person is for. This person goes to where the need is, okay? And then what we've done at each school that you'll see at the bottom is we've looked to see where there might be some open periods where that person can then also support. So there's 2.5 hours here, 2 hours at MAMS, 1 hour at JFK that is also dedicated to supporting behavior support. In addition, we shifted Cameron Thompson from elementary to secondary. And so he is split between the two schools, but he is supporting behavior the same way that Michelle is supporting behavior, again, from a prevention model between NAMS and JFK. And then we added a district level person. This is a new position. We were actually planning to do that before all this happened, and I'm super thankful that we did. Christy comes to us from the ESD. She was the suicide prevention coordinator for 5 years. So she has a ton of experience. She actually built that program from the ground up. So she has, oh my goodness, first of all, experience creating a program, which is awesome, but also working with students who have some of the most severe social emotional needs. So she's really helping me to shepherd all of this change and support our staff, which is really great. And then what you know about Emily, just reminding you, we've extended our outpatient partnerships. We now have a partnership with Stronger Oregon to be able to have our students who need additional support. Stronger Oregon can do teletherapy and in-person therapy. They also see families and they are insurance blind. So great for access. Continuing our partnership with Trillium. And then we are seeking, and we just haven't registered yet. We're moving the wheels to expand training into collaborative problem solving for our staff. I have a couple more slides, but they'll go quick. This was the longest one. I just wanted you to know who we have and what they do. I think you know about all of these things. This is what we have in place. You've heard it from the principals. I really just want you to know that while we don't have counselors, they are not TSPC licensed counselors. We have people in place to meet the needs of your students. Okay, it took creativity. It took some thinking outside the box, but there are people there to meet the needs of our students. They just have different titles. John, I see you thinking.
Well, what I was thinking was I thought I saw that the first training that is going to go down for staff this year had to do with just taking on exactly what the vacancy is here. And I didn't know how the one hand washed the other, but it's dead on.
Yeah. Yeah, are we gonna see you? You're invited.
That's why I was invited, yeah.
All right. Next. So part of, we've done some things really, really well related to social emotional. You can see all the things that we have in place. We have a lot of really good tier 1 things in place. We even have, we actually have things in each tier. What we don't have in place is a really good framework from which to operate from. And someone who can really take all of that on and move, really move through different, move through a rubric and really figure out, we're here and this is where we need to go and do some different self-assessments. Christy Woolner, it's hard, we got like all these Christys in the district now. That's really what her district level job is going to be designed to do. And the CASEL competencies are nationwide, they're very well researched. That's what a lot of it has been. We've been implementing what I've been working from. I'll own it with all the different hats. And then the pandemic hitting, I have not implemented, all of the pieces that I would have liked to with the fidelity that I would have liked to. So I just want people to know that this is a framework. These color pieces in the middle are really the main 5 pieces of social emotional learning. And if you've been in education a while, you've seen these around. Next. Handle with Care is the ODE, the Care and Connection campaign that they have going on. Resources have been sent out a couple times from me to the principals and to these cell coordinators. If you're on Facebook, you've seen it on our Facebook page. I just want you guys to be aware of that. And everybody's email is here. There's tons of resources on the website. I think that might be it. And you know where to find me. That was really long-winded, but it's really important. Questions?
I just have a couple of comments, and then I got a question. Number one, I'm really happy to see this entire team put together and the creativity with the lack of counselors. I think that this is going to be really needed, especially coming back a lot of our kids are coming back with things that we didn't even know about yet. So great job. I like to see more and more people involved in that team. I do have a question on, we have tier 1 interventions, we have tier 2 interventions. Questions about tier 3 interventions.
Yeah, so that's where we have Stronger Oregon, we have Trillium, so Christy, our district level person, is the one. So after tier 2, then Christy is the one who oversees all that, and they would have an individualized plan, and we're working with an outside agency and wrap services at that point. Good question, I just didn't list that. Thank you. And thank you for your feedback, I do appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Superintendent's report. Right, or did I miss?
I think I'm
First,
next.
sorry, Christine.
Go in our budget report real quick.
Yeah, I'm gonna get it pulled up here. So this is the report that I shared last meeting. And this is our kickoff for this year. I was talking to Gail the other day, and she said that really until we get through September, that'll really give us an idea of, what we're gonna look like toward, for the rest of the year. But I still wanted to share this with you so you can kind of see what's going on. So this first one that I have up here is the lunch fund. And you can see our revenues. We didn't have much in revenue because we didn't have much in expense. And then beginning fund balance. Oh, actually, I take that back. Those aren't the same numbers. So we did have 39,000 in revenue. That's just reimbursement from the federal government. And then we had a pretty good healthy fund balance, which was important. And that was one of the things that came up in our audit. They questioned, why we normally a lunch fund is just self-sustaining and we don't have a lot of money left over. For us, this is good because now that we have that food director position, that will go to pay that position. And then in expenditures, you can see that there wasn't any expenditures this month and that last 2 months, and that's because our summer school grant or summer learning grants actually paid for our summer school employees, amongst others. And so that was all taken care of. So really the only cost that we had to run our summer school program, to the food program is, or the food fund, I should say, is very minimal. So you can see that our month-end fund balance actually went up. And then next month is when we'll start seeing the salaries for our lunch employees. And then, oops, oh, shoot, hold on just a second. Any questions about the lunch one? No. Okay, so this is the financial summary for our general fund. And you can see at the beginning of the school year, we do get extra funds in the state school fund because we don't get a payment in June. So they build us up at the beginning of the school year. We also get paid our common school fund, which is paid twice a year. And then those grants in aid, some of that is ESSER funds, some of that is some Measure 98 funds. But that's where that piece is from. And then if you go down into expenses, you'll see that we did have quite a bit of expenses in salaries. So for example, our lunch fund and stuff, those would show up in here, but then we'll get reimbursed for those later on in the year, or not in the year, in the next month or so when we get the grant reimbursement. And then the other expenditures are pretty much on par. Our insurance, you can see, was a little bit higher than was expected, so that's a little bit higher. And then going back up, our beginning fund balance. So we budgeted 392,000. Our projected beginning fund balance based on our audit is 461, so a little bit higher than what we budgeted. So that was nice. And so again, the run rates are kind of hard because they're just estimates. I didn't plug something in for every single month. I plugged things in that I knew were going to happen, not just putting numbers in there to get to whatever the balance or the budgeted number is. So it's not really going to give you a true picture of our run rate. Next month, when we have our first full month of salaries and benefits, and a normal amount of expenditures in terms of, you know, the supplies, then this will start to look a little more consistent, if that makes sense. So any questions at all? But one thing I wanted to bring your attention to, if you see, so under the supplies, 400 supplies and under expenditures, you can see a pretty big gap between what our projected is and what our budgeted amount is. The 379, that is what our true goal is for expenditures. The difference, that 400,000, that's ESSER funds that we have put into that category, so it's appropriated. But at this point, we're not planning on spending that. It's just put somewhere so that we can spend it if we needed to. And it makes no sense to put it in technology and maintenance, because that seems to be where, at least up to date, that's where the majority of our ESSER funds got spent. But so we're really not going to spend 780,000. That 379 is more the goal. And you can also see that a difference there in the 300 level as well. And that is when I put these numbers in, I put them based on what we're shooting for and not what we budgeted, because the goal is not to spend all the ESSER funds this year, obviously. Any questions at all for me? Okay. Oh, and we had our audit. It went well. We haven't gotten our final audit yet. There was no real surprises. I did learn a lot during the process. Our auditors were really great. But there was no surprises on audit. So that's always nice. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
And now we're ready for our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Director Kincaid. There is a lot to report this month with the onset of a new school year. I will do my best to be brief and keep everyone awake. But I do want you to please ask questions as we go along. There's a lot of information here. So first, let's start with an enrollment update. We're trying to reconfigure some things in our enrollment update based on some questions that have come up from directors in the last couple of months. First, I want you to know that of all of the families that we potentially lost last year and couldn't find, our administrators did an exemplary job of reaching out personally to every single one of those families. They double checked that. I was really pleased to see that. We do have our traditional report in the board packet about students who come into Mount Angel, students who go out to neighboring districts, schools, online virtual schools, and private schools. And next month, we will do a more effective job of putting them all in one spot in the board packet for you. They're in several different places. What I'd like you to know about students coming in and out, in addition to what you see in the board packet, is that I approved 7 requests for students coming in and only 1 for students going out. And I think that's a good trend. Much of what you see when you look at those reports, most of those approvals are years and years old. So I think it's important for you to have just what's happened in the last month.
Correct.
So 7 in, 1 out. Homeschool, you will find near the, I think it's just on the 2nd page of your board packet. Many of these, again, were approved before my arrival, but there was one approval just last week for one student to go to Oregon Charter Academy. This is someone I'm going to be reaching out personally to and asking if we could meet those needs through Stride K-12. And then I believe I mentioned earlier this evening that we have 4 students enrolling in Stride K-12. The parents are going through the appointment process with Eva Briseño down at district offices. So that is my report for enrollment. Are there any questions about that?
Did I understand you to say that administrators reached out to each of the families? Thank you.
Yep. In-service week was busy for everybody. We had our all-staff gathering the morning of Wednesday, September 1st, and the focus really was on who we are as a family in our organization, trust, making sure to recognize the service milestones of our staff members, and also the whole concept of old keys don't open new doors to help people maybe shift their thinking. There were some essential trainings that many staff members were required to attend, having to do with student health updates, first aid, and CPR. And then all 3 schools at some point did some training on our new curriculum, Character Strong and Purposeful People. I think it's worth noting, even though it was mentioned by 4 different people about this curriculum, one of the reasons why I like it, I know that socio-emotional learning, or SEL, is a really common label right now, but the things that you didn't hear tonight about Character Strong are that they focus on leadership, they focus on collaboration, they focus on creative problem solving. Those are what our 21st century employers are looking for. They're looking for that more than anything else, even more than a degree necessarily. So we are teaching kids what they need to have to be successful as future employees. Worth noting tonight, I believe. We had a curveball thrown at us last week, but you know what? This is an amazing team of people that are committed to working through it together. I wanted to spend a bit of time talking with you about how that response went and what the most common phone calls are that we are getting from families right now. So the first thing that usually happens is that we have parents and guardians that disclose something by calling us. My student is not feeling well, or there's a positive case in my home, or my student went to a soccer tournament and someone ended up being positive. What do I do? Those are our most common. There are some other ones, but those are the most common. When that happens, as it did happen last week, our district nurse reviews ODE provided scenarios, and there's a whole packet of what to do when. And we are required to work with the Marion County Health Department. That's not a choice for us. And you will see if you ever go into the link, board members, that is on here. That's the link to these scenarios that tell us what we must do. If there has been a direct exposure to a positive case and it is known and verified, the district nurse contacts the county health department. Again, that is required to verify that. And the 4th step, I think, is so important and I need to get a message out to the community because people are still trying to grapple with this. We don't make the decision about the quarantine and what needs to happen. It's the county health department that determines that. Any questions on that?
Is that like a set in stone that the county health department has, or do they do it case by case?
Can you provide me more of an example?
I mean, is it always like, okay, if your child was exposed, they now have to be quarantined for 14 days or for 10 days, or I guess.
Thank you for asking that. So there is some discrepancy between 10 days and 14 days right now. And while I'm not a medical expert, what I would tell you is that 10 days is a minimum expectation. If you look at our local data right now in Mount Angel, it's it's concerning. It's very concerning. The high recommendation is 14 days if you have true concerns about health and safety. Right now we do. It may not always be 14 days, but right now we can be more preventative by having kids that need to quarantine home for 14 days, with the understanding that when that local data changes, we can also revert back to a minimum. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
So there was a lot that happened last week. And again, a strong teamwork is what made us get through this. We did learn some things. We learned that the use of face coverings really allowed us, through new Russell guidance, to keep our kids in school and not have to quarantine entire classrooms. Last spring, we would have had to quarantine entire classrooms, or in other areas, maybe entire PE, those kinds of things. So in that sense, face coverings, although I know they can be frustrating at times, really kept our kids in school, which was the intent. Building health and safety protocols remain critical to prevention. We tightened up even more after last week about cohorting and physical distancing, cohorting everywhere, because the more that we can keep track of cohorting, the more we can contact trace and eliminate large numbers of students from being quarantined. Right now, and this did come through from ODE last week, we need to optimize outdoors whenever possible. Whatever it may be, any kind of instruction, we need to get kids outside. And then we need to have a pivot plan at the ready, because right now, again, the statistics locally are concerning, and we need to be ready to pivot, and that is something that we are working on starting tomorrow morning. Questions? I did give a longer presentation about this mandate last month. This is just a brief follow-up to that. We know now that this mandate is required for staff, volunteers, volunteer coaches, and it is also required for outside clubs and sports and nonprofit organizations. This needs to be completed by October 18th, and the methods for verification of this are getting a copy of vaccine cards for those that have chosen to be vaccinated, submitting an exception of religious or medical need, and or an attestation statement, which I am still waiting to hear from PACE about, for clubs and sports, and not school sports, not extracurricular, but community sports like that might use the St. Mary's gym, those kinds of things. But by October 18th, they need to have signed an attestation statement that they are aware of this and that the adult has either been vaccinated or will work with me to turn in an exception. So those are next steps, and I will be working on that in the next week or two.
Have you heard back from all staff?
I checked today, and there are 6 staff members that have not taken the survey yet, and I know who they are. So I'll be following up with them tomorrow. But we have 85 folks who responded to the survey.
Good.
So now I'm moving on to a new topic. It's new, but it's old because this particular issue has been 3 years in the making. So our formal Division 22, which the board does annually, will take place next month. This is a specific issue that we've been working with in Mount Angel in one area, which is high school media programming. Just for background information for everyone. When we submitted the report for the year 18-19, the standard for the high school media center was not met. A waiver was submitted to ODE. ODE said, yes, thank you. And we were expected to meet the requirements of that waiver by the end of the year. The requirements were not met. So for reporting year 2019, 2020, a waiver was submitted personally to Colt Gill, the Director of Public Instruction at ODE. He gave us a waiver for a year, and with an expectation that that media center would be somehow brought back to life. Now we are at a point where it goes not only to the superintendent of public instruction, but the State Board of Education. So I have had to submit a letter to the State Board of Education, and I will be presenting that letter this Thursday to the State Board of Education for a temporary one-year waiver, because we did not meet the deadline of September 1st. And the goal, and it's a great one, is to reestablish a physical space at the high school for the media center before the end of the school year. Let's get those books out of the boxes and back on shelves. Are there any questions about this?
Yeah, why was it taken away? Do you know? Or
I do
maybe
not
Gail
know.
knows? Because it's been gone for a while.
It was gone prior to me.
Okay,
I
Erica.
know. I was there. First of all, kids weren't using it. The books are very antiquated. They're not relevant. And really, a lot of, I think it's the move to digital, right? And so the hope was, I think, that we would be able to have some sort of like digital media space. But ultimately, like where's going to be the funding and where would the space be? And there wasn't space for that. And if you've seen the book at JFK, I'm not sure that there's a relevant piece of literature there. I mean, Teresa could.
There is some from when I went to school there, so a few years ago.
So I think that's part of it too. I'm not sure the last time a student checked out a book, and I'm not being facetious. I'm not sure. So I think if we're going to do it, there's meeting the standard, right?
Right.
We can get books out of boxes, but then how do you make it a functional space for students to use?
Yeah, I don't think people checked out books 20 years ago when I was there. So. it's
And
fine.
they're the same books, and they weren't relevant then. So
Some of them were relevant when I was there.
okay, well, I'm sure they were.
I believe since Director Gordon talked about digital, that it's important to note that Superintendent Troy Stoops did try and promote that idea to the Oregon Department of Education, and it was turned down. They want to see books on shelves. We will make that happen. Other questions?
I think Director Kincaid can give them a tour.
I'll get them out.
You still have them, huh?
I do.
All right, I'm going to keep us moving along. The next part of this report is an annual report for the student investment account funds. It seems like every couple of months there's a different SIA report. Here's another one. This was actually simple and sweet. I answered 4 questions, which are in your packet for you near the end of the packet. The important thing for people to note tonight are the 4 priorities that are the meat of our student investment account. These are our priorities that Mount Angel determined based on what our local community said. Actively recruit, support, and retain staff from ethnically, culturally, and linguistically diverse backgrounds. Provide professional learning opportunities to teachers and staff on culturally relevant instruction. Strengthen support for students' health and well-being by partnering with school staff, district staff, WESD or Willamette Educational Service District, community partners and families. And 4, establish sustainable systems for regularly reviewing data to monitor the district's progress on student achievement for all. And all of these wonderful things got written and put into a plan, which the board approved, and then COVID hit. And it made it a challenge to meet the needs of the priorities. But what we were able to do, and what you will read in the packet, this is the abridged version, are areas where we found some success during COVID. For example, we did have professional learning opportunities. both for teachers to learn more about how to be effective distance learning instructors, but also equity and inclusion. Great success with priority number 3 and student well-being, partnership with Trillium Services, and the addition of a multi-tiered system of support specialist. And I know that there were a lot of surveys last year in terms of engagement and holding forums. So those were, it may not be large amounts of success and progress, but it's incremental and we were working on it. The next question asked what the barriers and challenges were. We had a reduction in funding. Mount Angel only got 33% of the funding that we planned for. So that was a huge roadblock for us and other districts. And then the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, was another challenge. In terms of maintaining engagement, which is an important aspect or element of SIA, what were our successes and challenges? Well, we had successes. We had community forums that we provided in English and Spanish, and surveys that we provided in English and Spanish is a start. And then finally, the question was, how did you prioritize your decisions when you knew you only were going to get 33% of your funding? How did you make those difficult decisions about where it would go? We were very fortunate because our plan was built on the needs that were a direct hit or a direct need with what our kids needed last year over the last 18 months. So for Mount Angel, it was very easy to prioritize those efforts because that's what the plan had already outlined. Are there any questions on this annual report? Okay. Any other questions about any aspect of my superintendent's report tonight?
Rachel, you might not be able to answer this, but maybe the principals can. The students that have been put into quarantine, what are we doing to support them while they're at home? Is that something that they're given, you know, the parents expected to come up, pick work up, you know, just to kind of keep them in tune to what their peers are learning in class? Or, you know, we just have to kind of figure this out within the last couple of days.
And we're continuing to work on
Yeah.
fine tuning our plan, we'll say. It was a bit of a surprise in week 1, but the teachers each put together packets for the students, you know, covering the skills and standards that they were working on in the classroom, and tried to provide some, you know, direction and things like that as well. And, you know, families could choose to have technology also if they would like to, you know, just provide additional support. But we're still working on kind of clarifying that for ourselves so that we can be clear with families. We did a quick job of getting it ready the first week, and we're continuing to refine it.
Question, do you see in the refinement that you'll put in a requirement for direct contact between the teacher and the student that has been set aside for a while?
We would like to, you know, we're just getting up and ready for the school year. And so
Absolutely.
last year we utilized a program called Seesaw. I probably talked about it at some point,
Yeah.
but it was a great communication tool between students and families.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't yet set up. And so it is now set up, but we haven't taught the kids to access it yet, you know.
No.
So we're just sort of like,
Good.
yeah, it will be a
Yeah.
great tool, and it is an easier route for students to be able to communicate directly with their teachers.
So that technology stayed with us and we'd be able to.
Yes, and the kids will pick it right back up for sure. It's
Good
just,
deal.
you know, with a different teacher, we still have to set those expectations for the.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Rachel. Next would be any board member reports. All right, this time would be for public forum. Bill, is there anybody?
I don't have any in person. No one so far has signed up online either.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, we can give you a minute in case there's somebody who does want to sign up. That's a full minute, Jill, but it doesn't look like it. Okay, so next on our agenda then is the superintendent evaluation timeline.
That's included in the packet.
It's in the packet, yeah. I think it. So these are action items that we need to approve, so it is in your packet. It's the one that we had done with our meetings with our meeting with Sarah. I've gone over that and reviewed it again with Steve. So I'm open for a motion to approve the evaluation.
I move that we approve this evaluation form that we've worked through. It's currently in the package.
For a second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Like,
And the other one is the board superintendent working agreement, which is what we had gone over also in both of our work sessions. So again, this is up for approval. So if someone would like to make a motion for approval.
I have a question before we start on that though. And that is, I see this is on, usually you see the heading being the organization that's taking responsibility. I see this as a footer of the Oregon School Board Association. And I wondered if that changed what we're doing here at all and why that wouldn't be something that we would have taken on. This is their product?
I believe it was their format.
Yeah.
Like they gave it as like kind of like a template sort of thing.
Okay,
And then at that last training, we tweaked it and, decided and came up with
okay.
what was ours. So
Thank you.
that's probably why it still has that on.
Is that the format we need to keep then? We're not allowed to keep it unless we use their stuff?
No, I think we absolutely can make it Mount Angel.
Good,
Friendly.
that's where I'd like to go with it. My recommendation is I accept this and move that we accept this with the exception of changing it to Mount Angel School District heading.
What my recommendation would be to just accept it as is, knowing that I will follow up and put it on a different letterhead.
Thank you.
We do it.
So,
One step at a time.
yeah, so do we
I
need,
move that we accept the document entitled Superintendent Operating, Board Superintendent Operating in our packet.
Second.
so it's been moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now we're on to discussion items. And that is the board policy. The last meeting, we talked about having a student representative on the board. So this is the policy, very short and sweet. So this is like the first reading of it. Do we approve it now or wait? For next? So I should read it. Board is provided for a formalized ongoing method of communication with district students by establishing a position of student representative to the board. The student representative shall receive notice of meetings, the agenda and the appropriate agenda materials be provided a place at the board table and shall have the same privileges of discussion as apply to board members. The student representative shall not be a voting member of the board. The student representative shall be installed on the board through the following oath of office. I will support the Constitution, laws of the United States, the state of Oregon, and the laws thereof, and the policies of the Mount Angel School District, and will discharge the duties of student representative to the Mount Angel School Board to the best of my ability. That would be up first of all.
In our previous discussion,
Yeah.
didn't say that they wouldn't be a part of executive sessions.
Correct. And
Right.
Does that
There.
need to be noted in this?
it's not in there.
Oh, that's a good point.
This isn't-
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to add that to it. that delay the approval for next meeting? We'll just go. Any other discussion? Superintendent goals.
We have one more policy to look at.
Oh, one more policy.
Director
Sorry.
District purchasing.
Oh, district purchasing.
This way I will not have to call a special meeting
Right.
for a contract and not impose on your time.
So this one right here says 10,000,
Mhm.
right? And you stated that it's common practice that be more than 10,000. Is that what you?
The OSBA plate should be here with it, and I apologize for that. OSBA plate puts brackets around 10,000 and says 10,000 to 150,000.
Like that.
And then it's left to each district school board to decide what is right for them. I do not know of any that exceed $150,000 anywhere in the state of Oregon.
So if we redline this, what should that number be?
Well, we get to choose what it is.
What should it be?
I would like to recommend that you entertain somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000.
Very reasonable to me.
And I wonder why we wouldn't just go to 50. I'm concerned that she's being prudent in budgeting. She's new at budgeting and she's working hard to budget. That there is a system that's been set up that says districts end up being small to huge, and you're going to be in this to 150. I'm saying that I think we're in that bottom third, and just by math of John Conklin, I say, why don't we shoot there?
50,000 sounds like a reasonable number to put in there.
I was gonna read that too.
So do we have to redline this or approve it in some way for you to give it to the next reading or?
No, we'll bring it back
Bring it
for the
back.
second reading with your recommendation.
Okay, yeah. So the other thing on our agenda, we talks, that's the last thing, right? The last policy, okay, was about the OSBA elections. We can nominate someone from our school board if anybody is interested in that.
I recommend Teresa.
I decline.
I recommend her again.
5 years.
Oh my gosh.
The superintendent. Oh, yeah. Superintendent goals, sorry. So the superintendent goals.
Do we have some?
Director Kincaid, would you like me to jump in and
Yes,
do that?
please.
Okay, happy to do so. Happy to do so. So thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight to share this. This is some of my favorite work because it helps me. Actually, it really excites me. I just think about where I can take an organization, and so it's good work. So the important things you need to know about the superintendent goals, excuse me, is that I pulled from different sources. I pulled from what we talked about in executive session and the 9 standards that I'll be formally evaluated on. I pulled from our own board agreements, board superintendent agreements. You'll find that 2 out of the 5 goals here are a direct reflection of the conversations we had about our own priorities of working together. So with that, let's start with the very first goal. What I'm trying to get at here, the work, is that I'm going to utilize continuous improvement strategies, professional learning communities, multi-tiered systems of support, and other collaboration efforts at all levels of the district to increase student achievement as the district's highest priority. That's the work. The evidence that I want to be able to show you by the end of the year is that by June 2022, An academic disparity between Latino students and white students will be reduced by at least 2% on the phone. Students receiving grades of Ds or Fs at the middle school and high school, 9th grade students with credit deficiencies, and grade 8 math on Smarter Balanced Assessment.
What is the disparity now?
It's about 10%.
10%.
And it's been that way for at least 8 years, maybe more, in every academic area. So the next big piece of work is that I'm going to represent the school district by being visible throughout the district and community, participating in community events, extracurricular activities, local organizations, and city government and services. This was one of your 3 expectations of me. And I have 2 performance goals. One is that each quarter, I would like to deliver to the board a report that will include the number of calendar visits, the purpose of the visit, and an overview of the activities that took place during those visits. So basically, it's a fancy way of tallying up for you what I've been doing and why. The second performance goal would be that by May 15th of 2022, I would deliver to the board a presentation that identifies the amount of communication artifacts that have been provided to stakeholders during the school year, what the purpose of the communication is, and an overview of the results of those efforts. So for example, all of the community messages that I've been putting out, or a parent survey, anything that is a communication artifact, again, I want to be able to show you a tally along with justifying what the results were of that. Any questions thus far? Next big piece of work, the superintendent will communicate with board members promptly and effectively. Really essential work here, and I have 2 goals. The superintendent will review current district policies and develop a framework that identifies a 3-year plan for updating all district policies. By March of 2022, the superintendent will provide the board with a copy of this framework, which will clearly identify all policies, when they were last updated, and when they will be updated again, so that we can get on track. And then the second one, something always to strive for, the superintendent will improve the timeliness of the delivery of materials to board members. And I'm going to know if that achievement goal is met because I'll hear from you. Whether, based on your experiences of receiving materials, but my expectation would be that board materials would be in your hands no later than the Thursday prior to each meeting. What would a plan be without mentioning COVID-19 somehow? So that's what objective 4 is. The superintendent will ensure the health and safety of all students and staff, partnering with local and state health officials, monitoring COVID-19 virus transmission rates, and addressing the needs of the students, families, and staff. The data that I'm going to collect to show you the evidence of is that in all instances, when positive cases of COVID-19 are identified within the district, a comprehensive communication protocol will take place within a 4-hour window of time. Communication will involve informing the health department, informing affected parents and guardians, informing the board, informing the staff, and informing the community. And then my final goal, or excuse me, my final objective and the work I would like to be focusing on is that I will provide school environments for staff, teachers, students, and families that are inviting, respectful, accessible, safe, and secure, and instill a sense of community. The data that I will be sharing with you as evidence will be to analyze district data annually and develop and implement innovative student and family support programs that enhance a healthy, safe, and secure learning environment increase student extracurricular participation, reduce absences, and increase parent participation. So those are my proposed goals for your consideration this evening. And I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have. Or feedback and comments.
I like how specific
Yeah.
they were.
Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-oriented.
Smart goals.
Cool.
I do want to say that it was hard to choose 5 because every area of my work is extremely important, including fiscal management and things such as that. But these are the 5 that I really wanted to zero in on.
Does it concern you at all that not having anything about fiscal on there will be concerned when you're trying to address the public?
I don't really feel that way. And just to back up that statement, Director Conklin, it's still part of my evaluation, my formal evaluation, right? And so there will still be plenty of discussions, and I will be obligated and want to provide you with the evidence of fiscal management. Thank you for asking that.
It was strictly a thing about comfort levels when you were out in public.
Very comfortable.
Good.
At 8:07.